Welcome in, Dwayne Nation. This is your host, Justin Paez, alongside Genoa Agudelo. Genoa, how you doing today, my brother?
Yo, Dwayne Nation, I'm doing great, Justin. Free agency has been so much fun. There's been so many crazy moves, Justin, and hey, I am so excited to talk about it with you today, man. Let's get this thing rolling, man.
I mean, completely. Free agency, got underway last Monday. We had our power rankings episode that prior Saturday, so we've been waiting so we can knock out. Today we'll be covering running backs and tight ends, free agency coverage there because we know how heavy running back, the changes, the amount of changes at the position, and then also this week, maybe tomorrow as well, we're gonna do the wide receivers and quarterbacks. So stay tuned for that. And now let's dive right into it because we want to talk about these running backs. Obviously, it's a hot commodity in fantasy football. They're not as deep as the wide receiver position. That's why it's so interesting to talk about these guys. And I think on the top of our list, the biggest signing that we need to talk about is Saquon Barkley to the Philadelphia Eagles. What a move that Philadelphia pulls off. It was between what it seemed to be Houston and Philadelphia, and then Philadelphia pays the big bucks to bring him in, snatch him from a division rival. Jano, what are your thoughts that Saquon is a Philadelphia Eagle?
It's quite the surprising move, Justin, and it makes two juicy matchups next year. As we know, the Cowboys and the Eagles are divisional rivals. It's going to be two great, juicy matchups in this year's fantasy football year and regular season. Um, just a lot of things to just digest here. When you look at Saquon Barkley, he is still, one of the premier running backs in this league. He's had a couple injuries in the years back, but when the Giants added Brian Dable, you can tell that Saquon Barkley had a boost in his career. And, now he's in Philly and an offense that is dynamic with a quarterback who I love in Jalen Hurts. And the tush push now becomes the Saquon's push. I love Saquon Barkley going into next year, Justin. I mean, as far as fantasy, Justin, what are we thinking here with Saquon Barkley and that dynamic offense?
If you just look at it on face value, he's leaving a very poor blocking team. Just about everything in the Giants on the Giants team is worse than it is in Philadelphia. And even though they lost Jason Kelsey, that O line is still worlds way better than the Giants. So it gets me really excited. The fact that there's only Kenny Gainwell still in the backfield, because we know Philadelphia likes to throw in other running backs, but they've never had a running back of Saquon's caliber. Which fun fact, him and Miles Sanders used to be teammates at Penn State. Now they both have been Philadelphia Eagles. But to me, Saquon rockets up to top 5 running back, maybe a early second round pick, maybe late first. I love the move, and I think that they're going to start giving their running backs, the full, allotment of work. We know we saw that 1 week from DeAndre Swift and maybe a few sprinkled out in the year, but then he fell off. I don't think that'll be the same story for Saquon. But I do really enjoy that move. And I think we're in the mode of giving these moves a grade. So just give me a quick grade and then we'll move on to our next running back.
I'm gonna go A minus just because Jason Kelsey just retired, and man, Justin, we would have loved to see Jason Kelsey block for not just Jalen Hurts but Saquon Barkley. But hey, Jason Kelsey's gone. He's had a great career. We're excited to see what the Eagles do now with the offensive line. It's very interesting. You did mention Miles Sanders. They also had DeAndre Swift last year, who they just got rid of. So now Saquon Barkley is the now bell cow for the Philadelphia Eagles. So I'm gonna give it an A minus just because the O-line is a little bit shaky, but I do believe Philadelphia gets it right here in the draft, and maybe here into the free agency. We still have time.
Yeah, it's very true. My grade on it would be a B plus, and just further explanation here. Uh, okay, for fantasy football, it might be an A plus, but for the Eagles, I think it's a B plus because they needed more help on the defense in the secondary. But they paid up. They paid the big bucks to get Saquon, and I know he's an explosive guy and kind of changes the outlook of this offense. But B plus, I like the A minus, so a fan there. But yeah, all right, we're gonna move on to our second running back and a guy that we know very well. It's arguably the most shocking move of free agency, in my opinion. Josh Jacobs leaves the Las Vegas Raiders and is now a Green Bay Packer. And then you're looking at it on the onset, and you're like, Jacobs and Aaron Jones, man, that's going to be a tough to decide who's going to be the lead back. But then they get rid of Aaron Jones, and now it's Jacobs' backfield. So My quick thoughts on it is I kind of view him in the same light as Aaron Jones, maybe like the RB 12 to 16, kind of in that RB 2 range. I probably won't be super excited with his as if he was my RB 1. He
Mhm.
lacks explosiveness compared to Aaron Jones, but he can command a higher volume of work. So I'd give it like a I give it like a B. So yeah, what are your thoughts with Jacobs to Green Bay?
Yeah, I actually like it. I'm going to agree with you, one of the most surprising moves of this free agency. I thought with Vegas, they had something really going here with
Right.
Antonio Pierce. They had a building block. All they needed was the quarterback. But man, they give away Josh Jacobs, who in the past couple years, Justin has been a little bit unhappy with Vegas and their situation. I just feel like now they were kind of on the upcome, and it sort of kind of sucks to not see, Josh Jacobs in Vegas with that potential great roster. But hey, he is now a Green Bay Packer. And this is a team now, Justin, that is looking to go to the Super Bowl next year with the Green Bay Packers. They made it all the way to the divisional round in last year's playoffs, and they showed promise. Now that Jordan Love is their franchise quarterback going forward, he's going to need a bell cow running back. I mean, that's just the truth of it. So I love Josh Jacobs in Green Bay. There's just a couple things about Josh Jacobs. I feel like at times he does lack explosiveness. He does get a little discouraged. If the game script is not going his way, you won't really see much from Josh Jacobs as compared to Aaron Jones, who's, if he's healthy, Aaron Jones is going to give it all he has, as he did in that wildcard game against Dallas. So to rate this move, I'm going to give it a B plus. I like it for fantasy. If you can get Jacobs somewhere in the second round, definitely in the third round is a massive steal, Justin. Um, He's going to get the goal line carry. Something that does kind of concern me now is that when Aaron Jones was there, he was kind of that speed back, and A.J. Dillon was the power back. Now in Green Bay, you have two power backs.
Right.
So it's going to be a little cause of concern, once they get into the goal line situations. But I'm going to give it all the faith that, that Green Bay is going to give him the majority of the touches. So I'm going to give it a B plus, just because I'm a tad bit skeptical on how these two power backs are going to coexist in the same offense.
No, I think that's a really good point you bring up. They did bring back AJ Dillon, so now they have two powerhouse backs.
Mm.
And now, at first light, you'd be like, no, that's kind of that's tough for Josh Jacobs, but I think it's going to help him because he's a better receiving back than Dillon, and I think he's a better power back than Dillon. And so I don't see how often Dillon will be thrown in besides maybe giving Jacobs a breather. So I think that's interesting there for that team. But I do agree that third round, maybe late second is kind of where I'd hold him. But yeah, okay, cool. All right, we're moving on to the RB3. And, just so we can segue pretty well, we just talked about the newest running back in Green Bay. Now let's talk about the Green Bay running back that's not in Green Bay anymore and is in Minnesota, Aaron Jones. At the fallout of them signing Jacobs, they get rid of Aaron Jones, and just really quickly he signs with the Vikings. What are your thoughts now on that Minnesota backfield?
Justin, that Minnesota offense overall is on the upcup. They just need a quarterback. So, with the departure of Kirk Cousins, it's going to be very interesting to see what the Minnesota Vikings do in the draft. With Aaron Jones, I like it. I'm not the biggest fan of it. Aaron Jones, one thing about him, he's a great running back. He just gets hurt a lot, Justin. So, if Aaron Jones goes down, you got to question, his durability. As last year, Justin, he was hardly a factor. I think he played the first couple games of this year. And then it just seemed like in the middle of the year, it was so week to week. I think he missed about 3-4 games in a row. And then after that, it was kind of on and off. He'd be in and out. That's why it was so shocking to see him have such a great game. And it's such a great playoffs he had. He even had a great game in San Francisco in that second round. So if Aaron Jones can be healthy, Justin, I think it'd be good. Just one thing that hurts it now, though, is now that Kirk Cousins is not there. Look, excuse me. I love Kirk Cousins as a great playoff or play action, quarterback that can get the ball to the running back. So I think that hurts his value, though, Justin. As far as fantasy, I like Aaron Jones probably late in the 5th round, just because I just feel, like, with Kirk gone, I feel like it limits his opportunities just because I feel like Kirk Cousins can really open, the offense through the play action. He did so well with Alexander Madison as his running back. So, it's tough that Kirk is not there. If I were to grade this, I'm going to give it a B minus. If Aaron Jones is healthy and if Minnesota can get the quarterback situation right, no doubt Aaron Jones will have a great season. But since for the situation right now, even if they would go JJ McCarthy, I still don't really like that all the way. So it is a 1 year deal. So I'm gonna give it a B minus, B minus, and Aaron Jones, his touchdown upside isn't all that well. He's more of a yards guy. I don't know if what do you think Aaron Jones could do on this offense?
I was trying to keep my composure here because I want to come out and say how excited I am for the Aaron Jones signing. Now, for the Vikings, they get him at a fairly cheap deal. I know the Packers probably have to pay him some, but he's only getting paid 7 compared to Jacobs' 12 in Green Bay now. And another thing is, you mentioned yes, now they're going to have a rookie quarterback in that backfield, commanding the offense, but usually the quarterback, the rookie quarterback, likes to give it more to his well-known, established veteran running back, and I think that's what Aaron Jones can be. I do like Chandler behind him, but I don't think Chandler will steal too many touches. And then the fact that Justin Jefferson is in that offense, it leaves some. They're allowed to expand the field because you can't just stack the box when you have somebody like Justin Jefferson running around, and Jordan Addison for that matter.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of it. I think it changes their game. They had Madison and Chandler last year, and it was fumbles from Madison, and then Chandler came on at the end, but then I don't know. It was too much of a committee that just didn't work. I'm pretty sure they didn't have a rushing touchdown for like 8 to 10 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that won't be the case for Aaron Jones. I think he still has a lot in the tank. I know he's getting older, but I give it like an A minus. So
Ooh.
I'm happy with it. To be honest with you, where to draft this guy in my mind right now is a third rounder. I think he can land in that third round. I'm over a guy that I think we're about to talk about. I'm going to jump to it now. The guy
Mm-hmm.
you're wearing the hat for his new team, Joe Mixon. He's going to be rocking those new jerseys. So let me get that thoughts on those jerseys.
Oh, Justin, as a Texans fan, we've had the same design for the last 20 to 25 years since we've been in existence in the NFL. I'm so excited. This seems like a new era in Texans history. We finally have our franchise quarterback. We finally have our franchise head coach and a franchise defensive player, our cornerstone. Defense was championships. So we need a new look, Justin. I feel like, those old Texans uniforms was the old era, we were always losing, we're always tanking, always picking top 5 every other year, it seemed like. So this is a new era in Texans. This is the winning era of Texans history. So I absolutely love them. I think it's a refreshing look. It looks a little bit similar to like the Falcons and the Commanders font, a little bit like the Cardinals, like that same font. But I feel like, it's a new era. Let's rock them, and I think we're gonna get used to them. And hopefully, Justin, we can win a Super Bowl with those jerseys.
Yeah,
Um,
I like the jerseys. I don't like the 3 Tank Dell's 3. That's what I'm stuck on. I can't get past
yeah.
it. But I like Nico's jersey when in the little leaked photo that we got to see. But yeah, all right. Well, past that, we got to talk about Joe Mixon because they were in the Saquon sweepstakes. They missed out. Singletary leaves, and you're like, what's going to happen with this team? Then they make a deal for Mixon. What are your thoughts on Mixon as a Houston Texan?
I like it. Okay, it's good, not absolutely great. With Joe Mixon, he's a very good running back who's going to get you your touches, 60 to 80 yards a game and possibly a touchdown. I do like it though, as receiving out of the backfield. I remember there was this game a couple years ago Joe Mixon had against the Panthers, I believe it was, where he had about 5 touchdowns. Was it the Panthers, Justin? It was a couple
It
years
was.
ago
It was.
where he had 5 total touchdowns. He had a great game. I think a couple of those was receiving out of the backfield. So I think that could be a good bell cow running back for CJ Stroud. This past year we had Devin Singletary and Pierce struggled all year. So now that Singletary's gone, he was kind of like a speed back, but never really so reliable. Had some good games for the Texans, but now the Texans get a reliable running back. And I feel like this can help the development of Dameon Pierce. And who knows, maybe the Texans can go later in the draft and get another running back and have, 3 pretty good running backs for CJ Stroud to get to. To grade this move, I'm a homer. I love my Houston Texans. I'm going to give it a B plus. Just because Mixon's a little bit at the not end of his career. I still feel like he does have a couple more years in the tank for him. As far as fantasy, I want to definitely get your take on this, Justin. I'll go first. As far as ADP rounds, I'm going to go fourth round just because he has such a great quarterback in CJ Stroud. And I feel like there's going to be different situations where defense are thinking that, oh, CJ Stroud's going to pass. And I feel like they're going to run. And just like I mentioned, the receiving game for Joe Mixon has been so well. He was so reliable for Joe Burrow. So, now with the Texans, I feel like Joe Mixon, if he's healthy, he can be a top 10 to 15 running back. I like him as good as a third or fourth round in fantasy drafts. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, I think he is a much more capable pass catcher than he probably gets credit for. And Singletary, he was a fine pass catcher, but I think it's definitely an upgrade from
Mhm.
Singletary to Mixon now. It's not a major upgrade because I agree Mixon's kind of dropped off in efficiency. I was just looking here on Fantasy Pros, and Mixon he scored under his projection in 10 of the 17 weeks that he played. So there's some room where he underachieved. But he's in a new offense. I think the offensive lines maybe the Texans might have a slight edge on that. And then I kind of view the passing attacks pretty similar. Just they're both going to be pass first teams, I think. But I think Houston might want to be a run first team more often. Just seems like a San Francisco type of mold. So I like him, and I agree that late third, early fourth might be where I kind of slot him in. But I'm pretty certain that they're gonna bring in a late round running back in the draft.
Yeah.
Probably a receiving back, which could hurt his value a little bit if this running back, if it's like a Jalen Wright and he comes in and he can take a lot of catches away from Mixon. But I think early on and through most of the season, because I think it'll be a later round running back, Mixon will be the bell cow that we're looking for that he was in Cincinnati. So I give it a B, just to the fact that maybe because the standard was set that we might get Saquon, and it didn't happen, and it feels like we maybe settled just a little bit. But yeah, I'm fine with it. I'm happier than them not doing anything and waiting until the draft because I don't think there's anybody in the draft. Maybe a couple names that are better than Mick. That would be a better fit than Mixon.
Mhm.
But we're not looking. We're looking for a good vet that we can rely on. So there's that. Yeah. So I got a B on him. You said B plus, right?
Mhm.
All right. So then we're moving on to the big back. Probably the happiest news I think for a lot of fantasy people. Derrick Henry joins the Baltimore Ravens. Him and Lamar, the number one rushing attack as a running back and the number one rushing attack as a quarterback, are on the same team. And I like the move a lot. They get him on a fairly good deal. Is it two for 20? So I give it an A. I'm
Yep.
very excited about it. I think I saw Gus Edwards had 13 touchdowns last year. Derrick Henry could literally double that if he wanted to. So I'm a big fan. Janelle, give me your thoughts.
Justin, this is the Heisman backfield, the all elite Heisman backfield. I'm giving the nickname, trademark it in Baltimore. This is going to be so much fun to watch, and I am scared for every single defense from week 1 to week 18 through the playoffs. For any defense that has to face this offense, with Lamar Jackson's dynamic rushing skills as a quarterback, you add one of the most, brutalizing running backs in NFL history, a guy that can take it from end zone to end zone and 99 yards, as he's done it at least 5 to 6 times in his career. Now that you mentioned that, Gus Edwards had 13 touchdowns from the goal line or outside of the 20 or inside of the 20, you have Derrick Henry now, Justin, who still has a couple good years. Justin, in Tennessee, this guy had a great year. He was like top 5 in rushing yards with an offense that, had quarterback carousel all over, a team that didn't even make the playoffs, and Derrick Henry was still able to do that. Now he goes to the number 1 seeded Baltimore Ravens, Justin. This is all-time dynamic. If these two can stay healthy and they can have like a wide receiver, which I've just been preaching for Baltimore to do, this is no doubt an A-plus signing, Justin. And if you can get Derrick Henry in the second round, let's say you get a, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, come back down, get a Derrick Henry, you are set for a fun fantasy year, Justin. I am so excited because, Gus Edwards is gone now. He's in LA. We don't know when J.K. Dobbins is gonna be there next year. If he's gonna resign, I'm not sure if they're gonna keep him. He's been hurt. They had Justice Hill, who is pretty good. He wasn't quite injured. He's
All right.
healthy. And Keaton Mitchell could be back, who they believed in. He tore his ACL late in the year. We don't know how he's going to bounce back. So Derrick Henry is the number one guy, no doubt. I wouldn't even raise an eyebrow, Justin, if you pick him late first round. If you're at pick 10 or pick 12, you can get a running back and get a receiver. That wouldn't even be, a bad move. So I think, Justin, this is, I want to say, Saquon is the best running back move for all teams, but I think Derrick Henry is just I'm not really sure which one is the best one, Justin. I'm going to give this one an A+ just because of the quarterbacks involved and how much couple years Derrick Henry has. These are 2 Heisman winners looking to win a Super Bowl. And these are 2 players that have been, cut off by Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs when, Derrick Henry was in the Titans when those couple good years they had. And, Baltimore, this past year, they weren't able to get up. So, now these 2 team up together to, take down the Chiefs. And, Justin, I love it.
I absolutely love it. I think everything you said is all right on point. The fact that, Derrick Henry averaged over 4 yards a carry this year with a bottom 5 offensive line. Now he's going to jump to a top 10 offensive line with a better quarterback, with a better defense, with a better wide receiver, the wide receiver room. But just about everything is better in Baltimore. We've been hoping that it would go this way. Another thing too is a lot of people that are going to be on the other side of this are going to be like, Baltimore usually never has a top 10 fantasy running back. They haven't had Derrick Henry. They've had an old Mark Ingram and Gus Edwards and injured J.K. Dobbins. It just is never put together. But now Derrick Henry's there. And yes, he still has it, guys. He didn't look like he didn't look last year. He didn't look like he did 4 years ago, but he's still in a position to be. I completely agree with you. Top 10 running backs is very clearly in the cards. So yeah, so I got an A. You're right there with me. We're very excited about Derrick Henry, and that makes me wants to jump to the first signing of free agency. It happened right off the bat. DeAndre Swift is a Chicago Bear, and I frowned. I looked at it and I absolutely frowned. I know we just talked about our favorite signing. I think this is going to not prove to bode super well just because I like Roschon Johnson. Khalil Herbert is serviceable, and I think it's going to become a committee. Swift, he didn't have the most efficient year behind the best offensive line in the NFL, and now he's going to Chicago, which they're still working on that offensive line. A good thing for them, in my opinion, is that they won't have a rushing quarterback. I know Caleb can move, but Fields could take away a lot of touchdowns when he was there. And now it's going to be Caleb who's going to pass more often, and I think Swift might get those goal line touches. That's the calling card for Swift. If I was Chicago, though, I don't think I would have done it. Now, they made a lot of other moves, good moves, like the Keenan Allen move and stuff like that, which we'll talk about in our next episode that's coming out tomorrow. But I don't know. I gave it a C. I think that Swift, I'm not the biggest Swift fan. I'm not a Swiftie. No, I like Taylor Swift, but not this Swift.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. I don't think it's going to be super great in Chicago. But yeah, give me your thoughts.
You know what, Justin? I'm actually going to go another direction. I feel now that the Bears are on the upcome. They did get it old Keenan Allen, but they do still have DJ Moore. They have 2 pass catchers. Now this offense is trending the right direction, I feel like. They're going to get they have the number 1 pick. They're going to get Caleb Williams, who's, in my opinion, very special. He's going to be good. And now you have some depth at running back. You mentioned Roschon Johnson. You mentioned Khalil Herbert. But, these running backs this past year, Justin, they were on and off. Dante Foreman was in the mix a little bit too, had a couple great games for the Bears. So there were a couple running backs that you can't really count on. They had the chances to do something. Now with Swift, yes, he fell off pretty bad in the last part of the season, as well as the whole Eagles offense. But he did have a pretty good, first 7 to 8 games, Justin, for the Eagles. Now that offensive line in Philly and the offensive line in Chicago are 2 different sides, 2 opposite O-lines. So you got to question, yes, there is, a little bit of some negativity, going into this year of how DeAndre Swift's going to be good. He is a speed back, a very relatively smaller guy. He's not built like a Derrick Henry or a Josh Jacobs. He's very skinny, very speedy though. So it's gonna depend on how the Bears approach it. If I had to grade it, look, I'm a big Swift guy. I loved him coming out of the University of Georgia a couple years back. He was good in Detroit, just got hurt. He was good in his year in Philly, and I was surprised that they got rid of him kind of quickly. But hey, they did get Saquon. It's hard to really pinpoint how to feel about Swift. One thing I will say, Justin, he's a great receiving running back out of the backfield.
Yeah.
He was so good those couple years in Detroit when he teamed up with Jamal Williams. So I like Swift to be the lead running back. I wouldn't say he gets the majority of the touches, Justin, but I do think he's that type of guy that could get you maybe 40 like total yards and a receiving touchdown and about 5 to 6 catches, something like that. A decent running back. I'm not going to have a McCaffrey type output, but half of what McCaffrey can do, Justin, for a rookie quarterback in Caleb Williams. If I had to grade it, I'm a Swift fan. I'm just going to give it an average B just because I'm a big DeAndre Swift fan. I like him. He's still very young, not old yet, not really, near Mixon's age or, usage. So I like Swift. He's a very sneaky guy. If you can get him like in the 5th, 6th, I think that's a steal, Justin. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that 6th, 7th kind of be where where I'd be at as of right now. I think it's a good point that you mentioned. At first, I wasn't on board with Chicago with their OC hiring, but they're making some moves to make this offense very interesting. And if it's successful, Swift will be successful in it. But yeah, I like that around the 6th, 7th. And a B is a good grade. I'm clearly lower on that, but
Mhm.
there's just so many moves that have happened, and they paid him good money. So we'll see there. And now moving to a guy who got the same money, and he joined a new team. Tony Pollard joins the Tennessee Titans. He's now part of a tag team duo with Tyjae Spears. Let me get your ideas first on the signing with Tony Pollard.
Yeah, I don't really understand it. I do feel like Tennessee, their offense is going a tad bit up in the direction. They just got Calvin Ridley to pair up with Hopkins. And I feel like Will Levis can benefit off that. But here's the thing, as far as running backs, Justin, we just talked about Derrick Henry, who did pretty good for Tennessee, but there was a ton of time this year, when Tennessee would be down, they relied a lot on Tajay Spears. And I felt like last year they're kind of like foreshadowing it, like letting us know, like, this is the guy we want to go with that running back. He was a rookie last year. So I feel like this year they were kind of thinking he's going to be our lead guy. They knew already, management knew, Derrick Henry knew that they weren't going to be together next year, right? So I felt like they were grooming Tajay Spears to be the next guy. Now, it gets confusing now because they kind of played a similar style, Justin. I'm not sure if you would agree. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears are somewhat kind of the same build, speedy running backs, can give you some good games. I feel like as far as the grading, I'm gonna give it a C, just a C, because I'm not really sure if Tennessee is gonna stick to that similar ground game, rushing game that they were able to have, with Derrick Henry. I felt like there was times where they were always playing from behind, so they're always more of a pass. And now that they have two pretty good receivers in Tennessee, I'm not really sure how they're gonna approach the running game. But with Mike Vrabel gone and Callahan's in, you got to look at what he was able to do in Cincinnati. With Mixon, I guess they're not really similar builds, so it's gonna be not interesting, but just I want to see how that goes, just because it doesn't seem like a fit for Tony Pollard. He kind of really struggled in Dallas last year. I know that's a pass happy team, but I feel like when Ezekiel Elliott was in Dallas and he was playing from behind, I feel like Pollard was hungry to get that position. So maybe with Tajay Spears there, you can make the argument that Tony Pollard will have somewhat of a bounce back season and do some good things for the Titans. I don't love it. I like it. As far as drafts, I'm thinking maybe 6th or 7th round, Justin. I think Pollard, Justin, is more of a DraftKings guy, a FanDuel guy that you can plug in. But you got to see what the week is looking like. If there's a couple buys for the top running backs of next year, I feel like Pollard is the guy to stick in. But it's really week to week on how I'll feel about Pollard going into this year. I like I said, I love it. All right, I like it. Don't love it. I'm gonna give it a C.
All right, yeah. I mean, I think something that needs to be said is that like as you were mentioning, the Titans like Tyjae Spears. He's not going
Mm-hmm.
anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And they're similar backs, and I think scheme wise they're gonna enjoy that because they're gonna put the defense in a spot of We could pass it. We could run it. We could do either with either back. Now, the thing is, I think sooner or later, maybe in the middle part of the season, Tony Pollard is going to start getting pigeonholed into being the early down back, and I think
Mhm.
that's going to hurt him. Now, he might be have more upside to get those goal line touchdowns compared to Tajay, but if Tajay takes the receiving work, because they're both pretty good receiving backs, if Tajay takes over there, I probably will end up picking based on who has the better value at ADP. If Pollard's going in the 6th round and I can get Tajay in the 8th or ninth, I might lean on doing that
Mhm.
just because I think they're very similar players now.
Mhm.
Now, I do think it might help Pollard to get a little less workload because we saw that a couple years ago when he broke out, it was, Zeke had a good share of the touches, and then Pollard got to work more efficiently. And then when Pollard had the full workload, it was a lot less efficient and it didn't look as pretty. So there's pros and cons to it. I'm gonna give it a C plus, a little bit better than DeAndre Swift, just because I like Pollard better than DeAndre Swift.
Mhm.
That might just be me. And the fact that I think he'll be battling with just Tajay, where I think DeAndre might be fighting with Roshan and Khalil Herbert. So I give it a C plus, a little bit better. I'm interested, maybe. I mean, it's a whole new look, a whole new team, with Brian Callahan now at the helm.
Mhm.
Um, and so I think most of what you saw last year, I think I would just scrap it and think that this is just going to be a whole new team. It's looking like
Mhm.
they're going to be more high powered in the passing game, as you were mentioning, which could hurt Pollard if he gets pigeonholed into an early down back role. But
Mhm.
we'll see. I think we'll learn more as the season catches up as to who's going to be played on which down. But yeah, okay, C plus. Moving on, we're gonna kick it in high gear because we also got to talk about some tight ends. I want to jump into a guy that was an RB1 for the last handful of years. Austin Ekeler joins the Commanders, which I got right. If you saw our episode a little
Yep.
while ago, our running back episode, so I'm patting myself on the back there. And even though I put him there, I still have I'm gonna give him like a B minus on the signing just because they lose Gibson, so they kind of need a receiving
Yeah.
back there. So they fill it in with Ekeler, but I just don't think he's the same back as he was a couple years ago. Um, so yeah, I'm on the fence there as of right now. We'll see how involved he gets because I think Brian Robinson is only going to get better and Eckler's only going to get worse.
Mhm.
Um, but it's a cheap deal. It's not something that is going to require Washington to give him a ton of work. But he seems to be excited based off of what he's been saying so far. And I like the offense. I think it's an interesting offense. And if Kingsbury, uh, starts off the season hot with a high-powered offense, and they're down a lot because their defense isn't super strong, they might have Eckler in on more downs. So I'd kind of have him in the exact same range as these Pollard and Swift guys, maybe a little later, maybe a round later, just because that catching work is going to be so valuable. But yeah, what are your thoughts with Eckler and Washington?
It's quite confusing, Justin, because I'm a big fan of Brian Robinson. He has been, he's gotten better, and his rookie year, he's pretty good, took over for Gibson. And last year, he had some really good games, Justin. He's a pretty decent, reliable running back in fantasy. He's a pretty good RB2 for Brian Robinson. He had some great games this year. But I like your point saying that, this offense is going to be interesting to watch because Brian Robinson is very young, relatively young. He has potential to be a, sneaky RB1, Justin. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
with Eckler there, you got to be a little bit of concern on how the touches are going to be. It looks like Washington is going to pick a quarterback. They just traded Sam Howell. So I feel like they're going to go for Jaden, Daniels or a Drake May, which makes the Commanders now a pretty interesting team to like immediately look at as far as week one. Um, as far as this move, name value, you got to remember Austin Eckler, Justin, was a top 5 fantasy pick just a
he's
few
been
years
there.
ago in a row. Actually, the past 2 years, everybody thought this guy is gonna, even Austin Eckler himself understands the concept of fantasy football and how it all goes. And so I don't know. I want to give it a C plus, Justin. But when you have now Eckler and Brian Robinson Jr. are in the same offense with a rookie quarterback, I gotta give this now a B minus. I feel like Eckler still has enough on the table. He did struggle a lot last year. He was injured. LA as a team was just pathetic. So I at first I didn't understand it, but as I thought about it a little bit more and more, just the only thing that concerns me, there's no injuries, nothing really concerns me about the talent, the skills. It just concerns me as the share. Who's going to get the majority of the shares, the target? Robinson, he's had a lot of receiving touchdowns as well. He's a guy that can take it from the house. Catching it outside of the backfield. So Cliff Kingsbury is going to have a lot of fun figuring out who's going to be catching, balls outside of the backfield. So I'm going to give it a B minus. Justin, I got to know how you're going to draft these running backs because these are two great running backs that if one of them gets injured, you potentially have now an RB1 with whoever you have. So, Justin, who are you drafting first? Where are you drafting these two guys, Robinson and Ekeler? What are you thinking?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, obviously Robinson is going to be the main back leading this offense. And at one point last year, he was a top 7 RB. Obviously, it fell off as the team fell off. But I think it's good that you mentioned if the season could go in two different ways for Washington. If they, snap right into being, a very good team right off the bat, I think Robinson will be a better commodity very quickly just because if, they start playing well, if they have some leads at times, it could be a Robinson show. But if they start falling off, it could be, if they're always down in games, it could be Ekeler season because of the catching ability. Because I like his catching work more than Robinson, even though Robinson did show some of it last year. But yeah, maybe Robinson goes in the 6th, and then Ekeler can go in the 8th or 7th. I think they're fairly close just because of that receiving work. But if the season gets off, or maybe like before the season starts, we start seeing talks that Robinson's going to be in line for receiving work, then I might fade Ekeler more. But and that's good you mentioned. Obviously, injury plays into a season. It's hard to project around it. But if one of the running backs were to get injured, I think it's sky's the limit for either of them. So yeah. So yeah, I had a B minus. You said B minus, C plus, right around there. All right, so let's move on to the next guy, the new lead running back for the Bengals, Zack Moss. I thought he was gonna. I think we both kind of thought he might re-sign with Indianapolis, but he gets an opportunity to be the lead back with Mixon out of town. Zack Moss, and I don't know. Okay, I mean, as much as he did, he showed some real grit last year and changed the course of his career. Because we thought he was a complete bust, but then he played actually very well. Was a top 5 running back until Taylor showed back up. And so I'm gonna give it a B. I'm gonna be right in the middle. I think it was a fairly cheap deal. So they're not too tied into it. But I think a thing about Moss is that he might be missing receiving work because they have a young Chase Brown in the backfield as well. So I think he might. I feel like there might be a big running back dead zone this year because I feel like he might go in that 6th round, similar to the guys we've been mentioning, maybe a little later. But I do like the offense he's in. So and they just signed Trent Brown, so then they have both sides of the line kind of solidified. So yeah, all right. What are your thoughts with Moss? I give it a plain B.
I feel like he's kind of like this year's Alexander Madison, Justin. Like last year, the Vikings got rid of Dalvin Cook, and it's all of a sudden he's the guy now.
Right.
So with Moss, he's very young. He's only been in this league just a couple of years. He had a couple of years in Buffalo. He had this 1 year in Indianapolis where he was really good, Justin. I mean, you could have made the argument that he is better than Jonathan Taylor at some point in the season. I know eventually Jonathan Taylor came back and took his position back, and one thing that just kind of concerns me is can he be consistent as far as rushing? Can he have a year where he can get 1,000 yards, 5 to 6 rushing touchdowns? I'm not really worried about the receiving. I feel like Zack Moss can get you some receiving touchdowns. It's the bell cow. Can he be a guy that can get you 15 to 20 carries a game consistently through 15 to 16 games of the year? I feel like he could have a good start to the season, Justin, but I feel like he could be one of those players that just fades off once the fantasy playoffs arrive. And not to mention, you mentioned a guy, what was it, Corey Brown? Chase Brown, yes. He was a guy when, you have to make the argument, how are they going to use him? They did use him a lot when, Jake Browning took over as quarterback when Joe Burrow was out for the year. So you gotta, and also they have a new offensive coordinator. So there's many things to consider when it comes to Zack Moss. Now, what he did in Indianapolis this past year was very impressive. He was able to do that with AR, and when AR got hurt, he was able to do it with Gardner Minshew. If I don't want to give it a C. I'm going to give it a borderline B minus just because I'm just not 100% if Zack Moss can just get you, 1,000+ yards a year. Can he get those 20 to 25 carries a game? Can he be consistent with that? He hasn't really been consistent with that. I feel like he's kind of like that Tony Pollard with Ezekiel Elliott. When he saw an opportunity for himself, he took it. But now that he has the number one role with offense that's eyeing Brown now as the next guy, as they did the last part of this season, there's a little bit of cause of concern. Also, with Cincinnati, their offense is, a little bit dysfunctional. Now that T. Higgins went out after getting franchise tag, they didn't resign Tyler Boyd. So it's just a little bit cause of concern. How 100% will Joe Burrow be? I'm gonna give it a B minus. I'm gonna be nice. Yeah, just eh.
Yeah, and I think so we saw Moss kind of revitalize his career last year, but it was in a fairly small sample size. It was 5 to 6 weeks. Then
Mhm.
Taylor came back, and I think Taylor got hurt again. And then he showed some good things again, but I think that might be due to a very good offensive line in Indianapolis and a very good coach in Shane Steichen. Um, so we've only seen a fairly small sample size of him
Mhm.
being a real bell cow, and we didn't see it priorly. In Buffalo, he didn't have the best opportunity, but he didn't show it in
Mhm.
his opportunity. So we'll see who the real Zack Moss is as we get into the season. But as of now, we have our grades for him. And moving on to the next guy, he leaves Houston, and he has to replace Saquon Barkley. Devin Singletary is a New York Giant, and yeah, that's like it's just kind of like okay.
Mhm.
It's obviously not Saquon. And we're still hoping that they make some moves to make this offense better. They made
Yeah.
some offensive line moves. They still need wide receivers, so it could be tough sledding. I don't know. I'm still not a big giant on the Giants board, and I think the fact that I think Philly's gotten better this offseason. I think Washington's gotten better this offseason. Dallas has not gotten better this offseason, but that's another story. Which we will do a free agency winners and losers episode. But
Mhm.
anyways, right now the Giants, I think they made some really good moves outside of it, with Brian Burns and other things like that. But Singletary's fine. I think he might be a worse Alexander Madison. There's nobody yet to challenge him. I know they have Breida, I think, on the roster, so there's really
Yeah.
nobody, which makes me think if he's getting high volume, he could be valuable. And I think he won't go high, but we'll see how the draft folds out. If they draft a day two guy, it might be close the books on Singletary. If they get
Mhm.
a Benson or a Brooks guy,
Yeah.
I might be out. But as of now, I'll give it a B minus.
I'm gonna go. Look, Singletary did good for my Texans this year.
Did good.
I just feel like he only did so well just because Pierce struggled this year with the new head coach.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give it a C minus just because the Giants, Justin, have the potential to be the worst team in football this upcoming year. You can make the argument that they're gonna get the number one pick in 2025 draft. So whatever top quarterback is in this year's college football, he is guaranteed to possibly be a New York Football Giant in the very near future. I look Singletary, like I said, he did good for the Texans. He doesn't move the ball as best as in critical moments when you need him. He just doesn't seem like that guy.
Yeah.
Here in the divisional round against Baltimore, he was a no-show. I know Baltimore is a fierce defense, but when you're good, you're able to make plays happen no matter what team, what the situation is. And Singletary struggled this year. He's not the guy that can get you a clutch 4th and 1 or 3rd and 2. It's tough. You're never gonna know what you're gonna get with Singletary. He could have 100 yards and a touchdown, or he can have 15 carries for 9 yards, and he's a no show. So now that he's in New York, Justin, with not C.J. Stroud, we love Brian Dable, of course, in New York, but what do the Giants have that can, make Singletary a decoy in some ways? The defense is obviously knowing where the Giants are going to go. The Giants need a lot of work. If they can get Benson, maybe I like Singletary a little bit, so he has a little bit of room to do that's what they need in New York. Don't really like the signing. I'm gonna give it a C minus. I'm being nice with that one. Like I said, New York is probably going to be the worst team in the league. So C minus. Don't really love it at all. Maybe you can have a couple good games. Maybe Singletary is once again falls in that category as a DraftKings guy that you look at week to week if there's a bad matchup or whoever the Giants go with, maybe that guy is out for a week and Singletary's that lead guy. Maybe that's a good Singletary time to trust him and go with him. But I don't think I'm drafting Singletary, Justin. Maybe as a running back 5. If I have my running back, if I have 3 to 4 running backs, and I'm nearing a kicker, maybe I'll get Singletary in the 10th, 11th, 12th round. I'm thinking, Justin. But
Yeah.
I'm not really too happy about it.
It's all going to come down to volume. If there isn't another
Mhm.
running back that's going to challenge him, which I'm assuming there will be, because it's not good to run into a year with Singletary and Matt Breida. So that it's all going to come down to volume, who they decide to bring in that backfield. But yeah, all right. Moving on, these are going to be quick hitters. So I got 3 running backs for you, and then we're going to jump to some tight ends, and then we'll finish out our episode. Gus Edwards is a Charger. Antonio Gibson is a Patriot, and A.J. Dillon re-signed with the Packers. Give me your thoughts on all 3. Yeah.
Okay, so Gus Edwards, I like because now that Eckler's gone, the Chargers didn't really have a running back behind Eckler. They had a couple Josh Jacksons of that nature. Isaiah Spiller, who you're very familiar with. So we're not really sure. But Gus Edwards had 13 touchdowns this year for Baltimore with Jim Harbaugh now as the head coach. I trust that Gus Edwards will be a factor somewhat. But I would love to talk about the Chargers later because they literally cleaned house as far as offense. So you got to be a little bit concerned. Antonio Gibson, I like. He is a fresh face in New England. He could challenge Ramondre Stevenson as the lead back there. Gibson, I feel like was good those couple 2 years in Washington, and then once Brian Robinson showed up on the scene, it was pretty much done for Gibson. I do think that he could challenge Ramondre. Now, if Ramondre were to miss a game or two, love Gibson for a DraftKings, FanDuel. As far as drafting Gibson, I would say you can draft him late in after, I would say, 15th, one of those last picks you get, Justin, how it is in the 15th and 16th round, you kind of already have your defense. You kind of already have your kicker. So, if you would draft Ramondre Stevenson, it would not be dumb at all to get Gibson later on in your drafts. I feel like he could be a steal, a sneaky guy for Gerard Mayo in New England. And lastly, you mentioned A.J. Dillon. We did talk about it a little. We touched on it during the Josh Jacobs segment. I do still like A.J. Dillon. He struggled a lot when Aaron Jones was out in those starts. It was just quite sad. A.J. Dillon was that guy that we were always optimistic about if Aaron Jones were to miss a game. He was so good in the Rodgers era. He had some pretty good games. But he's just fallen down a little bit for me. Obviously, I don't think we're going to draft A.J. Dillon, Justin. Maybe if we have Josh Jacobs, we're sort of thinking later after, like I mentioned, we get our kicker. We might go A.J. Dillon, but he struggled when he had his opportunities. You got to think that maybe Green Bay goes a running back in the 5th or 6th round because that's how Green Bay is. They always get their studs late in drafts. They never pick the most flashiest guys. They get the sneaky guys that do the job for them. So I'm not really optimistic on A.J. Dillon. We do have to wait for the draft and see what they do. If the Packers don't get a running back in the draft, I do like A.J. Dillon in the last 2 rounds of fantasy draft just for a handcuff for Josh Jacobs. But yeah, not really optimistic about A.J. Dillon. But what do you think about Gibson, though? Do you think he's a sneakier guy? What are you thinking about him in New England?
I wish I had excitement. I do not, though. I think the biggest thing that Gibson is going to bring will be a detriment to Stevenson. I don't think Gibson will have any real standalone value that you'll like to start unless there's an injury to Stevenson.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I think Gibson will just be there to be an annoyance for Ramondre Stevenson managers. As for Dillon, it kind of is the same. Even though, we spoke on it earlier, I don't think he's going to take as many touches. He had such a bad year that it kind of sells to me that he's just not that good of a running back. I had high hopes for him a couple years ago, and it didn't pan out either. And I feel like he didn't have any market, and he just came back to Green Bay because nobody else kind of was out there for him. I was hoping he went to like Buffalo or something, could be a good goal line back. But Jacobs is a very good goal line back, so I don't know if Dillon's going to have any extra value. He's a fine handcuff, as you were mentioning. And then with Gus Edwards, I think it's going to be kind of the same thing. They're very clearly going to bring in another running back. If they didn't, then things might change. And I think Edwards will end up being the early down back, and then they're going to get a guy that can kind of either do it all or will be a good receiving back. So I kind of view him the same. That's kind of his role in Baltimore, as an early down guy that maybe gets if he gets those 13 touchdowns, he'll be valuable. We'll see how that plays out. That's hard to project. You don't project 13 touchdowns by a guy like Gus Edwards. So I literally would just be like B, C, and arguably an F on Dillon. Like I just I'm very, very not excited at all. So
Yeah.
that's why I kind of throw them out altogether. I'm just kind of meh on all of them.
Yeah.
So yeah. Moving to tight ends, there's not that many. We talked about John in an early episode. Talked about Dalton Schultz coming back. We talked about Hunter Henry. So that like cuts it in half.
Mhm.
I think arguably the most interesting signing that we saw was Mike Gesicki. He is a Cincinnati Bengal.
Yeah.
Um, we talked in our first mock draft about maybe Cincinnati grabbing a tight end in the second, or if Brock Bowers were to fall, getting a guy. It doesn't look like they'll go with Bowers. They could go with Sanders later on,
Mhm.
because I think Gesicki will be their tight end this year, and he's better than Irv Smith. So I think I'm almost 100% sure there's going to be a point week 9 where I'm going to be like, I need a tight end. Oh, Gesicki
Mhm.
scored 2 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. I'll bring him in, and then he'll end up getting 3 catches for 20 yards. So
Yeah.
it's going to be I think he'll have a very low volume. But if he gets those touchdowns, it might be juicy. What are your thoughts with Gesicki?
Yeah, I like him. He's a big guy. He struggled last year in New England, but they had so many tight ends there. It's tough to know who's going to be there, especially the Patriots weren't really that good. So I like Gesicki as a very sneaky guy. Once again, I'm going to throw in my DraftKings, week to week guy.
Yeah, please.
If you're setting a lineup, you have a bunch of stars. I feel like Gesicki could be that low salary guy that you can just sneak in, and he can have a pretty good game. Joe Burrow has still yet to have that pretty good tight end. I think his best one in his whole career was C.J. Uzoma, who's long gone. I think he's in New
Who
York,
just
probably
got
not.
cut. He just got cut actually by the
Yeah,
Jets.
yeah. So, the Bengals need somebody at tight end. They have Jamar Chase. We don't know if T. Higgins going to be there. It's not looking good in Cincinnati right now. So, this is going to be a guy that Joe Burrow is going to need to rely on. I do think in the draft they're going to need to add offensive talent. As, historically in the past, Cincinnati has had some pretty, solid defenses. So I feel like Gesicki could be that reliable guy for, Joe Burrow. If I had to rate it, C plus, very underrated. Could be a guy that you could get maybe in the 14th round, Justin.
Yeah,
If you had
late.
your whole team, you didn't really look at tight end. Travis Kelce and Mark Andrews and Laporta are all obviously going to be gone within the first 3 rounds. So you're probably going to have to say, okay, well, I'm going to get my receivers, I'm going to get my running backs, I'm going to get whoever I need to fill in the holes, and then I'll get my tight end. This will be a good guy to look at, Justin. Round 12, round 13, not bad to look at Gesicki there.
Yeah, I'm all in agreement there. Nothing more to be said. He is kind of that guy, the late round tight end that
Mhm.
could prove to be, if he gets the touchdowns, could be fairly consistent. We will see. Now there's 3 more names on this list, and I'm gonna go in order. We're gonna shoot them all out here. I'm gonna go from my least favorite one to the most, and then I'll get your take on it. So first, we got Gerald Everett. He's a Bear. He's gonna be behind Cole Kmet with a rookie quarterback. I'm out. There's nothing there.
Mhm.
He didn't do very well last year, and Donald Parham kind of stole his thunder at times. So
Mhm.
that's already out there. Noah
Yeah, I
Fant,
agree.
Noah Fant re-signs with Seattle, but this time it's different because Will Dissly is not in the building. I'm interested, kind of in that same Gesicki realm, and I think Fant has more yak ability, going yards after
Mhm.
the catch. It could be harder for him to find touchdowns with DK, JSN, Lockie's already the 4th option. So a late round guy. And then my favorite one, to be honest with you, Will Dissly. He gets cut from Seattle. You're like, oh man, and then he moves to Los Angeles. The Chargers get him, and they needed a tight end. I thought they might go Brock and at pick 5 that they have. That's I don't think that's going to happen. That seems kind of far fetched now.
Yeah.
Will Dissly, though, is the man there, and I think he's got sleeper potential to be in that. We were talking about Jonnu a few weeks ago. He could be a top 10, top
Yeah.
12 guy. So I give that grade an A minus. I give Noah Fant probably a B, and then I give Everett an F. Like that's not going to do anything for me. I think it totally toasted his value. But yeah, what are your thoughts on those 3 guys?
Everett is definitely an F, no doubt about it. Cole Kmet is going to be a connection with Caleb Williams. When Noah Fant resigned, Justin, I remember I saw it somewhere at the gym, and I saw it underlined. I thought of you, Justin. You know what I thought about what you said, that if Will Dissly does not stay there, Noah Fant's going to be the guy. And I do think Seattle, I think they made the trade for Sam Howell, and I
Yep.
do think that they should get a quarterback. And if they do, I think that Noah Fant and a new rookie quarterback in Seattle would be so game changing. He was a guy involved in the Russell Wilson trade, and he was pretty decent in Denver before the trade. He was on and off. He had some injuries. That offense was never really good. They had Teddy Bridgewater and like Drew Lock and all them. So I think Noah Fant, now is his time to shine. It's now or never for Noah Fant. He can be a sneaky 8 to 10, maybe outside of top 10 tight end that can probably break out mid-season. I don't think it's very instant with Noah Fant, but give it a couple weeks. Mid-season, week 7, week 8, as the season goes on, a couple tight ends are hurt. Noah Fant's the guy you grab off the waiver wire. Could be a possible league winner at the tight end position. Not going to go extreme there and say he's going to be VV guy, but a guy that you can plug and play and could be good. And the last guy, Will Dissly, Justin. He sort of reminds me, in this situation right now, it sort of reminds me when Dalton Schultz broke out with the Dallas Cowboys a few years back. So I feel like Schultz has that yak ability. Not Schultz, excuse me. Will Dissly has that yak ability, that goal line play action. A guy that Herbert's going to look at when things aren't falling. I think the Chargers are most definitely going to go wide receiver in this year's draft, maybe in the first round, but definitely as early as second or third. So he's going to be a guy that Herbert definitely looks at, and I like that. I'm going to give it a C minus. All these to me, Everett an F. Noah Fant and Dissly are both C minuses.
Gotcha. Yeah. I think like you said, now or never for Fant, and Dissly has an opportunity that he maybe hasn't had, and he has gone through a couple bad injuries, an ACL and I think a patella. So we'll see there. Obviously he got cut from Seattle for money reasons. He wasn't playing up to his pay, so we will see. But yeah, that caps off our episode. Running backs and tight ends, check them off the list. We got our grades on those guys, and right after this, we're going to make a wide receivers and quarterbacks episode, which I know a lot of you guys are going to be very interested in, as are we. I think that's kind of where the juice is with recent news. We're itching to talk about it. So, and one more thing, Dwayne Nation, I want you guys to look at this. We got Dwayne Sports merch, okay? We got Dwayne Sports merch. I'm getting my bro one of them very soon. I got them all with me over here. We even got koozies, okay? So we're just building up the merch land. Please check it out. Just, get in contact with us through the YouTube or through anywhere you can. And we would love to kind of get that Dwayne Sports merch to Dwayne Nation, So yeah, that wraps up our episode. Great to talk to you guys, and great to talk with you, my friend, my cousin. So send us out.
Well, Dwayne Nation, hey, it's been a fun couple weeks with free agency. We're so excited about this next episode. This makes fantasy football so much fun, and it's going to be such a fun season, Justin. Free agency is just the beginning. We cannot wait for the draft, and hey, we cannot wait for this season, Justin. Just a couple months away before, training camp starts and mock drafts, and it's going to be a fun NFL season, Justin. We're so glad that Dwayne Nation is here to cover it, and hey, Dwayne Nation, we love y'all. We're going to see you in the next one.
Peace.